The night was meant to be mine, my birthday, my gathering, my evening to feel cherished by those closest to me. But instead of feeling celebrated, I sat there, watching my wife lean far too intimately toward a man I barely recognized. His name was Victor, someone she'd mentioned before as a connection from her arts foundation. Just a valuable contact, she'd said. Yet from the moment he stepped into the room, everything felt different. The atmosphere shifted. Gloria slid her chair closer to his. She laughed at all his jokes, too loudly, too eagerly, and rested her fingers casually on his arm, as though I wasn't sitting just across the table. When the server brought out the wine, she filled his glass first. Small gestures, yes, but they added up quickly. When it came time for the toast, I stood and lifted my glass to thank everyone for being there. I glanced in her direction, hoping for a smile or even a glance to tether me. Nothing. Her eyes were locked on him, like I wasn't even part of the room. I kept the toast short, sat back down, and stared at the untouched cake placed neatly in the center of the table. The conversation slowly drifted away from me, and I felt the distance growing. The guests shuffled in their seats, clearly sensing the awkwardness but saying nothing. My wife wasn't celebrating me. She was already somewhere else, with someone else. I stood and excused myself. No one followed. No one asked where I was going. I wandered through the back corridor near the service doors, trying to clear my head. And that's when I saw them. Gloria and Victor were standing near the side exit, his hand grazing the curve of her back. She leaned into him, laughing in a way I hadn't heard from her in years, light, free, unburdened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't raise my voice or demand answers. I simply turned and walked away. Past the valet, past the noise, past what was supposed to be my celebration. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't pretend anymore. I let the streets guide me, walking aimlessly. My phone buzzed more than once in my pocket, but I didn't check. I didn't want explanations. I wanted silence. Sometime around midnight, I finally pulled out my phone. There was a notification. Someone had tagged me in a group photo. Everyone was smiling, glasses raised, but something stood out. Gloria wasn't beside me. She was nestled next to Victor, leaning into him like he was the reason for the occasion. I zoomed in. Her eyes glowed, but not for me. At dawn, I made my way back to the house. Nothing had changed. The lights were off, the curtains still drawn. Gloria stood in the kitchen, calmly pouring herself tea like nothing had happened. "You just left," she said without even glancing up. "You noticed?" I replied, tossing my keys onto the counter. She shrugged. "I didn't want to cause a scene at dinner." I leaned on the doorway, steadying myself. "Gloria," I asked quietly, "is Victor more than just a contact?" She stirred her tea slowly. "It's complicated." That was it. No denial, no emotion. Just those two hollow words. It felt like all the air had left the room. But somehow, my voice held. "I'm going to stay somewhere else for a while." She didn't protest, didn't ask where I'd go, didn't even try to stop me. "Do what you need to do," she said. I went upstairs and threw a few essentials into a bag without really thinking. Shirts, chargers, toiletries, just enough for a few days. Then I texted the one person I knew I could count on, Cassian Rhodes. "Need a place tonight." His reply came almost instantly. "Doors unlocked. Come through." Cassian's couch wasn't comfortable, but it gave me what I needed most: space. I lay there half awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, doing everything I could not to imagine Gloria's laugh echoing down that hallway with Victor at her side. By mid-morning, I checked my email expecting nothing more than routine work updates. Instead, I found a fraud alert from our shared account. The charge was from a hotel, Jur Tower. It had been processed the same night as my birthday dinner. Spa services, room service, 2 guests. I sat upright, reread the notice, and forwarded the email to myself. It wasn't a gut feeling anymore. It wasn't a hunch. It was in writing. By noon, I was back at the house. Gloria sat at the dining table, eyes glued to her tablet. I dropped the printed statement in front of her. "What's this?" I asked. She glanced at it. Her eyes skimmed the page and returned to mine. No shock, no excuse. Just a shallow inhale. "You left," she said. "That's all you've got?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, flat enough to deny her the outburst she might have been hoping for. She set the tablet down with exaggerated care, like gentle gestures could somehow neutralize the harsh reality on the screen. "I don't want to argue, Leonard," she said quietly. "I'm not arguing," I replied. "I've just stopped holding my breath for answers that never come." She folded her arms tightly across her chest. "Then what do you want?" "Not this," I told her. I turned and walked upstairs, collecting more of my belongings, things I hadn't bothered to take the first time. I photographed the objects that still meant something to me. This wasn't a dramatic exit. I wasn't storming out. I was making preparations. When I came back down, Gloria remained seated at the table, her eyes tracking me. "You're making this bigger than it is," she said. "No," I told her calmly. "I'm adjusting." Her jaw clenched, but she stayed rooted to her chair. She didn't stop me. As I stepped into the driveway and pulled the front door shut behind me, I knew, without question, that the man who had walked into that house wasn't the one leaving it. That night, at Cassian's place, I opened my laptop and started filling out a divorce petition. I typed her name at the top, respondent, Gloria Whitaker. The sight of it on the screen felt like I'd just surfaced from deep underwater and taken my first full breath. The hotel receipt might have sufficed, but real confirmation arrived from places I never anticipated. 2 days later, during a break while I was working remotely, a message pinged from a colleague. Attached was a photo taken at a charity gala. Gloria was in a sleek silver dress. Victor stood beside her, his hand resting a little too naturally on the small of her back. I stared at the image, frozen, until another message came through, this time from a familiar number. Celine Varga, Gloria's cousin. Celine had always been forthright with me, blunt when necessary, more family than my actual in-laws at times. Her text was brief. "I thought you should know. It didn't start on your birthday. It's been happening for months. I'm sorry." I didn't respond right away. I sat there with the phone in my hand, slowly understanding that the restaurant confrontation hadn't been a sudden betrayal. It was simply when Gloria stopped pretending. That same evening, I scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney. Her name was Alara Quinn. She listened as I recounted the story, word by word. At one point, I slid the hotel receipt across the desk silently. She looked it over and said, "We'll catalog your assets, define strict boundaries, and move efficiently." "That's exactly what I want," I told her. "No theatrics, just clarity." That night, I logged into our joint financial accounts and began unraveling everything. I paused auto payments, canceled shared subscriptions, and opened an account in my name alone. Each step wasn't an act of vengeance. It felt like finally trimming away the dead limbs of a tree I'd kept watering out of habit. For the first time since my birthday, I smiled. A small one, but real. The ground beneath me was shifting, and for once, it was shifting on my terms. 3 days later, Gloria texted, "You packed some of my documents by mistake. I need them. Victor needs them for tomorrow. Can you drop them off?" I read the message twice. She could have asked me to return them to the house. She could have offered to meet in person. Instead, she sent me on an errand, to him. It wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. I checked the suitcase. Sure enough, buried among the papers I'd grabbed in haste were a handful of signed forms for the Arts Foundation. I could have told her to pick them up herself, but I didn't. I said yes. The next morning, I walked into a quiet cafe near the Foundation's offices. Victor was already there. He spotted me and paused, visibly stiffening. Then he straightened, as if bracing for impact. "Leonard," he greeted, uncertain. I placed the envelope on the table. "Your paperwork." He reached for it, but I didn't release it right away. "When did it start?" I asked, keeping my tone even. His jaw tightened. He glanced away, then met my eyes again. "Months ago," he admitted. "She told me it was over between you two, that only the paperwork was left." "That wasn't yours to decide," I said. "I didn't pursue her," he replied quickly. "She came to me." I gave him a slow, measured nod. "Then you'll carry that choice." He seemed to expect something louder, more violent, a raised voice, a fist. But I just pushed back from the table and stood. From where I stood, he looked smaller somehow. At the door, I stopped and turned slightly. "Victor," I said, "wanting something doesn't mean you deserve it. Don't forget that." Then I walked out and didn't look back. That afternoon, I met with Alara Quinn, signed the divorce papers, and handed them over for filing. By nightfall, I was settled into a temporary place, my essentials methodically organized in the closet. The confrontation hadn't shaken me, it had focused me. I was done searching for explanations, done waiting for Gloria to stumble. The documents we'd filed said everything that needed to be said, and for once, silence would be the loudest statement I could make. 2 days after filing the petition, Gloria made her move, not privately, but publicly. A photo of clinking champagne glasses captioned "New Beginnings." No names, but anyone familiar with our history could connect the dots. I didn't react, didn't screenshot it. I simply moved forward. I had the title to the car transferred solely into my name. I cut the last of our shared utility accounts. Every decision was intentional, clean, final, beyond reversal. That weekend, I stopped by a local market for groceries. On the way back to the car, I froze. Across the parking lot, Gloria and Victor were walking side by side, laughing at something on his screen. They weren't touching, but their ease with each other didn't need physical confirmation. I stood motionless until they disappeared inside. I didn't avoid her because I was embarrassed. I just refused to give her the satisfaction of acknowledgement. She'd made her choice. I wouldn't play the role of the man she escaped. Later that night, back in the quiet of the rental, I picked up my phone and opened our shared photo album. I began deleting pictures, not out of spite, but because I needed the room. Each swipe erased a moment from a life I'd been pretending still had a future. Weeks passed before I heard from her again. A single message. "Can we talk?" We agreed to meet at a cafe halfway between my rental and her office. When she walked in, she looked nothing like the woman who had toasted her new chapter weeks ago. She appeared worn down, her posture defeated. Sitting across from me, she folded her hands on the table. "It's not working," she said quietly. I stirred my coffee. "Victor?" Her mouth tightened. "He's not who I thought. He's distant. Always too busy, always disappearing. People at the foundation gossip about us. I thought leaving you for him would feel like a release, but it feels like nothing. Less than nothing." I let the words settle in the space between us. No reaction, no sympathy. "You walked away from a marriage for him," I said finally. "Were you expecting applause?" Her eyes brimmed with tears, though she tried to hold them back. "I made a mistake." I leaned in slightly. "No, you made a decision, and decisions come with consequences." She dropped her gaze to her hands. "I was hoping maybe we could start again. Try." I nearly laughed, but held it in. "Gloria, you ended us that night at the restaurant. When you chose him while sitting across from me, you just didn't say it out loud." She recoiled, just slightly. "So that's it? After everything we built?" "What we built meant something to me," I said. "It clearly didn't mean the same to you. That's the difference." Silence stretched between us. Then she broke it, almost in a whisper. "Do you hate me?" I finished the last sip of my coffee, set the cup down slowly. No, hate would mean you still held that kind of power. You don't. I stood, laid a few bills on the table, and pushed the chair back. As I stepped out onto the sidewalk, there was no anger, no sense of triumph, just a clean, unmistakable clarity. She hadn't only lost me, she had wagered everything on a man already slipping through her fingers, and I was finished paying the price for her choices. Time passed. Slowly, life began to reshape itself, new, strange, and better for it. The rental felt still, uncluttered. Mine. No lingering doubts tucked into drawers, no ghosts in the corners. Cassian dropped by most nights. Sometimes we played chess. Other times we sat on the balcony with a bottle between us. He never asked for the story. He just showed up, solid and quiet. I started carving out small routines that belonged only to me. On weekends, I wandered into a record shop near the station. Behind the counter, Naomi Drennan always had a vinyl spinning. We'd talk music, trade favorite albums, laugh over bands we couldn't stand. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't tangled, it was genuine. A reminder that connection didn't need to be laced with betrayal, and life moved forward. Work carried on. The promotion finally came through, and one evening my team insisted we go out to celebrate. As toasts were made and laughter filled the room, a memory crept in. My birthday. I recalled the quiet at that table, the cake no one touched, the way Gloria, without hesitation, picked someone else in front of everyone. But this time, I simply smiled and left the gathering early. There was no bitterness, no sting of embarrassment, only a decision I had made. I walked home alone through the city. These were the same streets I had once wandered with nowhere to go, lost in thought. Back then, I had been running. Tonight, I was just walking, free. The person who had once stumbled away from his own birthday, heartbroken, no longer existed. He had transformed into someone who realized the real loss wasn't her. It would have been staying. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't hoping for Gloria's attention, or waiting for her to choose me, or prove I mattered. I had finally chosen myself, and that was more than enough.